Here we are live. It is Friday, December 27, 2024, and much is going on. I am recording this show early to be played on my station at damradio.com at 4 p.m. in Missouri. That'd be 5 p.m. in Florida, and in Russia, I believe it's midnight if you would like to listen, but it's my English version of the show. I'll probably be joined by my esteemed brother at some point during the show to do a little bit of discussions on the Christmas and whatnot. But I wanted it first to tell you where you can hear me. You can hear me at damradio.com at Monday through Friday, 4 to 5:30 p.m. Shows live on there. I do my various live streams. I try to keep them much more organized. Usually I do the Russian version on my Russian channel. I do that at generally at 1 p.m. Florida time, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But through the holidays, I haven't done any. That's in Russian. That one I do in Russian, and I try to do my English version in at least once a week. I try to do the English version. What I'm trying to do is set it up where I can simulcast, do the video and the audio from my damn radio show every day from 4 p.m. to 5:30 Missouri time. That's the effort. Today, I decided not to be in the studio. I'm recording this. I'm just sitting on the side of the road watching traffic and getting ready. My youngest son is getting married. I am going to be at the festivities, and I'm going to be there. So the show is going to be recorded, and this recorded show will be played at 4 p.m. So I read something yesterday. There was a show that came out, and I can't play it for you. It's my Borzy Kaman person that I follow. And the investigations are on. Russia has shut down all Moscow airports and several more. I haven't checked yet this morning whether they have shut down more airports, but they've been shutting them down because they believe that this is a terrorist threat that Ukraine is terrorizing. I told you yesterday that I believe that to be true. The Ukrainians are bombing living quarters intentionally. The videos that are being shown, like the one from the in Kazan of the 22-story, 23-story building, a living, family home, family apartments, and they blew that up. There were three drones that hit it, and a couple more that we're seeing circling it, and that did not attack anywhere else, just there. Now we have the Azerbaijani flight coming that after the investigation, and I watched the video of the investigation, and there were 30 something survivors, 67 people on the plane. Apparently, and I'm not positive of the pilots because it wasn't part of the broadcast, but what they said on the broadcast was that, and they showed photos of it. It's you got to pay for this guy. It's something minor. It's like $5 a month or something, but I pay for this guy's feed because he has some pretty good information, usually backed up with photo. It's AI driven though, so I'm pretty careful with but I follow up afterward and see if I can find other sources for the news that he's putting out, and I can. There's a bunch in if you watch on Telegram and places like that. But this guy Borzy Kaman, Borzikmann, he has I forget what the name of it is. It's a pretty big channel, and then he's also on YouTube and a couple other places in Russia. He's got a Telegram account and things of that nature. So, but the report goes like this: the Ukrainian drones are going over, and they don't know whether the actual intended target was the plane or whether the intended target was something else. But it appears that either the explosion that was because it happened near the ground, because they've been bombing airports inside of Russia as well, civilian airports. And this plane, while taking off or not long after takeoff, there were these explosions. The 37 survivors say that the explosions occurred while they were in the plane, and there were holes in the plane. And these pilots flew. They couldn't. They were close. I wish I knew the time frames exactly, but I don't. But they went to another airport, but that airport was closed due to, and they didn't have anywhere to land. The 37 passengers say that they flew for another hour after the explosion with the pilots trying to find a place to land, and they were very saying, "Man, those pilots had done a great job because we should all be dead in there, and we should have crashed into, residential areas or something like that. We're lucky that more people didn't die here, including us. These are the people that are on the plane." And they say the plane split in half in the back. Well, the evidence shows that the plane is full of holes, and these holes are from something that blew up. And so they were saying that. So the Ukrainians immediately on their on Ukrainian social news networks, like their versions of Facebook and all over the place, they're trying to say that Russian anti-aircraft missiles did this. Russian anti-aircraft missiles don't blow up in that fashion. This is a much smaller, a drone-sized blow up, and there's a couple more that have happened, and they've grounded the entire airports because of what Ukraine is doing, and they are targeting civilian living places where civilians are. You can believe it or not about the Russians. I'm optimistic about what they do say, but I believe that the Russians are not targeting civilians to kill them. They may be targeting civilian infrastructure, but the number of civilians killed by Russian strikes is minuscule compared to those by Ukrainian strikes. Ukrainians are using them just like people do in Syria and in other terrorist sorts of organizations. They use people as human shields. And I had my suspicions. I spoke a little bit about it yesterday about what I thought was the case, and said it wouldn't surprise me if there's not some sort of terrorist activity, if Ukraine's not behind this. As Ukraine grows more and more desperate, Ukraine is taking desperate actions. They are attacking civilians. Now the Russians are slaughtering them on the Eastern Front. They're now Russians are losing their share too. Don't take that to mean that I don't acknowledge that and realize it. But I'm telling you, the Ukrainians are definitely on their heels here, and they're trying to get other people involved. Well, there's only one way to do that, and that is to escalate. And if you can get the Russians to overreact to your attacks on their civilians, then you might have a shot at making this America, NATO, do something more than provide weapons and provide intelligence and target all of their drones and target all of their issues. Now, Lavrov, I listened to Lavrov for an hour and a half this morning. I listened to Putin for an hour and a half this morning. I hope I remember to tell you about the blocking. There was a journalist named, oh my gosh, I can't remember his name. 80 million subscribers inside of Russia. 80 million. And he asked a question directly to Vladimir Putin about at Putin's press conference, which recently occurred last couple of days. And he asked Putin a question specifically about YouTube. Now, I was all ears for this because my channel was booming inside of Russia until about July. I was adding 400 or 500 viewers a day, 1,000, depending on the day. Call it 1,000 a week, but plenty, and it was just going all the way up to 15,000 because it grew slow, and then you could just see the trajectory where it would do the it's not a bell curve, it's a steep curve, and so I was watching my channel grow very, very quickly on the Russian side. And when I went over there in August, it was, we are stopping, YouTube is blocking. And YouTube then came back. I was watching all the things, and YouTube said, it's not us blocking in Russia, it is the Russians blocking YouTube. And the Russians come back and go, no, we're not blocking YouTube. Your infrastructure over there, you haven't done anything with it for 3 years, and it's now gone so slow. And now you started putting all this political nonsense out there that we do tend to, want to know what is being said, but most of it is YouTube based, not Russia based. Well, that argument's been going on since August, and so the argument going on since August is whether or not we believe what YouTube says, or whether we believe what Russia says. All I know is that for me personally, when I stream, there's nobody watching anymore in Russian, and my channel was just starting in English, so I expect it on the English version. It takes a while to develop a channel and develop a steady set of content, and I haven't done it steady enough to warrant. Because mainly the only time I do a live stream version is like today. I do a live stream so that it can be played on my show in a few hours. I can't be at my show today, so I am doing the show a little bit early. And hopefully I sent the link to a few people to join me on the show, and some family members even, and I'm going to send it to a couple of more as well, and try to get them to join us along, and see if they can enter into the show. That would be very nice. So I'm going to send it to a list of people and see if I can get them interested in joining in. And at any rate, I think that this escalation of the war in Ukraine is just from the Ukrainian side, bombing all over Russia. Like I said, this latest attack on airfields, okay, these are 800 to 1,200 kilometers, whatever that it happens to be. Call it 600 to 1,000 miles away from the front, from the borders with the Donbass region and Russia. And they are attacking deep into the areas where people are. They attacked in Grozny. And Grozny is a city in Chechnya. They attacked civilian living quarters and things of that nature in Grozny. And I am not for war, but I'm also not for indiscriminate bombing. Russia is bombing the hell out of Ukraine right now, but by everything that they're putting out, they are putting out that this is due to the fact that and they're giving the answers. They're answering some of these activities by Ukraine, and they're targeting infrastructure targets. They aren't targeting living quarters. They aren't targeting hotels. Now, I'm not saying that the accidents haven't occurred. They have. I'm not saying that some of them might not even be intentional. Maybe they are. I don't know. I'm not there. But the bulk of it, even from the Ukrainian side, is that the Russians have been bombing power plants, bombing water storage facilities, or processing facilities, places like that that they've been bombing. They want this war over, and they're pushing. the Russians aren't trying to take over Europe. Don't believe that nonsense, and don't believe half of the crap that you hear. I'm very hopeful. I'll say it again that the old Trumpster comes in and changes the way we do diplomacy, which leads me to and I have a visitor waiting. But David, we're going to add him to the stage. Can you hear me, David?
Yep. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Well, I'm going to continue with my story, but there you are. I appreciate you being here. And I wanted to tell a little bit about Sergei Lavrov gave a couple hour long interview yesterday. I had a chance to watch it late last night and see what it was all about. The very first question, and I also want to talk about Putin's interview. The very first question that Lavrov received had to do with propaganda and journalism and propaganda, and it was, what do you think of? Well, you know what? Might have been the second question. Doesn't matter. But a Chinese guy gave this question. He said, talking about the BRICS conference and the non singularity of the world that the rest of the world is trying to get in the growth of BRICS over the last month. Can you talk about that? And number two, what about the efforts to politicize everything about it as something negative? And Lavrov gave like a 10-15 minute answer to this question. And it was a philosophical sort of question, basically, with a philosophical answer. And, certainly it was propagandized. He's a very good propagandist, and he knows what he's talking about. But it rings of a great deal of truth with what he's saying. And just because it happens to be propaganda doesn't mean it's not correct. It's a slippery slope, because propaganda is propaganda. All of ours is propaganda as well. And so we want to be careful with believing things that other people say anyway, but at least it's from the horse's mouth. Sergei Lavrov is the second most powerful man in Russia, in my opinion, and maybe that's not the case, but that's the way I see it. And he's certainly the best spoken, or he's equal to speaking on terms of this nature, like Vladimir Putin, and because they're excellent diplomats. And the question was, when this, it was a long question that the Chinese guy gave in perfect Russian, by the way. He said, listen, when you go to when any Russian goes anywhere and tries to give people, if he wants to talk to somebody, people run away, people avoid you. Diplomats are avoiding talking to people from China and people from Russia. And he said, well, they think that is isolation of Russia. He said, but it's really not. And everything that they do to try to claim that we're isolated is actually making us more powerful. Now think about that. He said it's making us look inward and gather all of our power inward. And he said we are completely independent. But that doesn't mean we don't have friends, and we don't want to work with friends, and we don't have diplomacy. He said over the last 4 years during the Biden administration that he has ignored or stopped trying to convince people. And in fact, he now doesn't even try to schedule meetings with anybody. They just he just ignores them. They have their path, and that path is not the same path of the monopolistic world. It's not where everything. He said everybody that you taught that is avoiding us are the people who know that their power is waning, and they're trying to do everything in their power to keep that power. And he said that is what is going on. And he said, I've heard this topic on many times. We can't really stop the growth of the multipolar world where people look out for their international interests, but they're also interested in being a partner or a friendly country. You know, they're not calling people allies and enemies. They're calling them partners, mostly in the economic sense, and friendly countries, countries that are friendly to us. The unfriendly countries we ignore. So then they start talking about the propagandization. He says, well, people that block us, YouTube that blocks us, everybody that blocks our content is afraid of the content. He said, you know, people should have a right to listen to what they choose to listen to, and we have, you know, we should have a right to tell our competing view of the story. So it was really interesting because, and it was very interesting that they gave that question, the second question of the conference. Obviously, it was planned. That they gave it to the Chinese news organization, and Lavrov gives one great big one every year, and this was it. And so it was worth watching. If you can find it in English, you probably should. David, how are you doing over there? My
Most
call-in,
excellent.
video-in partner in crime, and also my brother. What's happening, David?
Sitting here watching a James Bond movie and listening to you.
Well, it's mighty kind of you. Am I
Well,
at least piquing your interest on something?
oh yeah, because I'm looking at it going, you know, if you think about it, the old James Bond movies, you know, if you get past the, oh, I'm a spy and all the beautiful women fall at my feet, you know, stick that every single one of the James Bond movies has, you know, they pitted themselves against the Russians, the Chinese, the you know, every foreign entity that you can do in order to show the alliance between England and America. And so I'm, you know, and it's not a historical film. None of them are, but it's interesting how you see films from back when I was very young and compare them to what they are right now. Who were the bad guys back then, and how has it changed? I don't think it's changed that much, except that China's come on strong to be one of the bad men, you know. And
Yep.
and
Now,
it's like,
anyone who's bad is Russian or Chinese in American filmmaking, and
yeah,
it's interesting to me that we are that we're still everything in our entire lives, like your James Bond movie, you know, propaganda, baby. Even back then. Now, Russian movies the same way. You know, over the last few days, I've given a slew of my favorite Russian films, and two of my absolute favorites are really examples of that propaganda. And David, wasn't it you that I showed the movie, or that I watched a movie with, called Brilliantavaya Ruka, The Diamond Hand? Was it that one, or was it Gentlemen Udachi with the three guys that escaped from prison?
it was the three guys that escaped from prison.
Well, it turned out to be four, but it was three guys. And was it funny? Did you like that show?
Oh, yeah. From what I could understand, you know, it was the what do they call it? Not the graphics, but the film itself seemed to be pretty funny. You know, my Russian, it comes from my elementary and college years, and those were a long time ago. And so I'm
Yeah.
not very fluent in Russian
Well, I remember
at all.
trying to subtitle it, or speak about it for you, or tell you some of the things about the show, because really it's pretty funny. And even that
Yeah,
one tiny bit of propaganda, but mostly not, because it was a shtick sort of comedy, but it's a pretty funny show. But I've
yeah.
been talking about a few of the movies that are my favorites, that around this time of the year I try to watch. And one of them is called Divchata, which is gals. And in the gals movie, it's girls living on a lumber camp, and you know, several hundred people living on the lumber camp, big mill where they cut and all that. So it's a big place. And so these girls all live together. They share a little cabin, and there's in this room there are 5 women, and it's the story of a little girl that comes in. Well, the propaganda part of that show is probably my favorite part, where in the beginning of the show, the girl is coming into the lumber camp, and the lead into the movie shows you the forests of Siberia, all of where it is, and they show you the overheads of the lumber camp. They show you how big that is. They show you an enormous lumber mill with logs and trees that have been cut that are larger. The diameter of them laying on the ground on the truck that is taking them to the mill is taller than the girl, and the girl is just this little tiny thing next to this enormous piece of lumber, or tree trunk, and then she has to run through it, and it's and they show all of this. They show the majesty of cutting down trees. They show that there was a team of that the teams of Lesser Rubli, which is lumberjacks, the guys that cut the trees, these people have competition. So there's a 4 or 5 man team, and each of these teams lives in a different hut, and they have competitions. And so you see the competition, the best in the camp, is who is the guy who has the most production, and he drives his team, and he's a strong commander of his team, and he gets put in the local newspaper called the forestry papers and whatnot. And it's very, very this is what we want you to be. We want you to be strong laborers, and we want you to these are and everybody is trying their best to do their best at their job. Well, it actually happens to be the same hero in another very political film called Spring on Riverbank Street, and it happens to be the same guy that's the main male hero. Also a love story, and he in that one is runs a mill of a steel mill, of a huge steel mill. And again, the entire front of the movie goes and films how this great big his would-be girlfriend visits him at the lumber mill, and it shows the trains going by, the enormous and then we're not talking a small steel mill. We're talking the biggest shipyard style. It's filmed in Odessa, and so it's certainly near a shipyard. So anyway, propaganda is everywhere and always has been. And when you watch our movies and Russians are always the bad guy, it's part of keeping us primed for the fact that Russians are they're not like us. They're not our friends. You seen that?
I've never seen that movie, but it does remind me that my job in the Marine Corps was to be a photojournalist and to write stories for the Marine Corps newspaper, and how my editor would always read over every single word and make sure that it always put Marines and the Marine Corps in a perfect light. They could never do anything wrong. And what I learned early on was there's always a story and there's always an agenda in every single word that's written or that's published, or and now anybody can do it on social media. Anybody can put anything out that they want, and you hear a lot, and I don't know how much of this is true or not, and that's how low my opinion of the media is nowadays, is that, hey, these guys always have an agenda, and you never know if they're lying or if they're telling the truth. What is Russian disinformation? They used that against Trump for years and years, and yet it all turned out to be untrue. And even this past election, they were talking about, oh, the Russians were involved here, the Russians were involved there. And still the Russian boogeyman, oh, the big bad Russia did this. Does the big bad Russia really have that much time to go after all these, petty politicians and try to influence? I sure as hell hope not. I mean, that's a sad state of affairs when they're so worried about other countries' government. What do you do in that regard? How do you know what to believe and what not to believe?
Well, it's definitely propaganda war, and it goes all the way to the deep state. It goes to the people that are trying to control the world. It goes all the way through Obama, the Clintons, and people of that ilk that are always, they always are trying to control, and they never say anything without coordinating with somebody else what is being said. And I always talk about that. What's the agenda for today? Like one of the biggest examples that pissed me off to no end was, we're watching on TV all day. Everybody knows what's going on. The video is streaming live, and everybody knows what's going on. And you're seeing people marching everywhere on the Capitol on January 6, 2017. And people are wandering around, and people are being invited into the Capitol. There's no armed conflict. There's no people laying on the ground in a prone position firing bullets. There's no nothing like that. And yet immediately they started calling it a uprising and an overthrowing of the government, anything negative that they could come up with. And it was not people peacefully marching. It was man, why can't I remember the word that I want to remember? What is it, David?
Insurrection.
Insurrection. There you go. They and it became an insurrection. Well, what exactly is an insurrection? Because every single Democrat started calling it an insurrection, and you can't get away from it. Even today, they can't say anything about January 6th without calling it an insurrection. And it's things like that. If you say it often enough, people will believe it. Well, that's why you need to look at the core, the fundamental, the root cause of it all. I had some partners I was working with on a couple of projects, and when you have a project, and if you're working on something, and the basis of your project turns out to be false, it doesn't matter what happens after that, does it? Because no matter how you do it, it's all false. And so whatever happens at this insurrection, if you can get people convinced that it's an insurrection, if you can get people convinced that Vladimir Putin invaded the Donbass region and wasn't invited in to assist in a peaceful takeover of power, then if you can call it an attack, if you can call it an insurrection, anything that happens afterward is the fault of the person who is guilty of the insurrection or guilty of the attack. But in Russia, in the Donbass region, it wasn't an attack. In the state capitol building, these people were invited in. It wasn't an insurrection to overthrow the government. And people have gone to prison for this. I hope the first thing Trump does is commutes them all and gets them out. And I don't care if they did something violent. They've paid enough. They've whatever happened, they paid enough. Just because the basis of the entire dispute is a lie, like you call it an insurrection, just because of that, I'm willing to say, listen, it was not an insurrection. If this guy was walking around with an AK-47, he wasn't, he shouldn't have done that, and nobody was, by the way. Nobody did anything like that. I see an insurrection as something far more devious, far more heinous, far more evil than what occurred on January 6th. And so the thing to do is to quit calling it an insurrection, don't you think?
Right. Well, what bothers me about the whole thing is that since that time, there have been hundreds of prisoners that have not been given their rights, yet we are preached to constantly about how prisoners have rights and they just made a mistake and they should be in, they should be able to do their time and get done. These prisoners that are in there in federal penitentiaries without even having the ability of defending themselves or going to court and facing their accusers, that's not America. And for the Democrats and the liberals to do that is totally, totally wrong. That's just not America. And I truly believe that this past election, people were finally standing up and saying, we've had enough of this bullcrap. And, they stood up and said, no more. And I'm a lot like you. I hope Trump gets in there. He gets rid of all the deep state, that he lets these prisoners out, because they have definitely had the time they've had their punishment, even though I don't believe 95% of them deserve any punishment. Maybe 100% of them don't deserve it.
Well, they
So
should all get pardons just to show that it's
yep,
over. Give them all a pardon. Give them all Trump's signature on a piece of paper saying that they get a pardon for any activity related to J6, and that's it. I think anything less than that is just wrong. I mean, when people are attacking government, we're allowed to attack government. We're not allowed to attack them with arms, but that's our capital. But I wasn't there. I'm not sure what I would have done in the meantime. But we're all pretty well behaved,
yep,
when we get into large, especially if we're getting into that, and the use of the government as a weapon against your political opponents is probably the thing I despise the most.
yep. I'd
It
agree
just,
with you.
yeah. So, did you hear about the Russian ships that have been being attacked as well? There's now some further information on the Russian ships.
Yeah, so what interested me was the airplane that went down that got, they heard an explosion and they recovered the black box from that airplane this morning. So it'll be interesting if you can, again, if you can believe what you hear on the news. Um,
Yeah, I watched
you know,
videos. I don't know if you heard my show earlier before you joined me, but I was telling a little bit about the interviews that I saw of a couple of the passengers who survived, and on Telegram, and you can find them on there. And they were saying that there was an explosion, which is what happened. That somehow there was an explosion. What are you doing?
yeah, I heard that they
Yeah.
heard the explosion and then the plane, did what it did.
Yeah.
So
Well, it flew another hour after that. They flew to another airport, and then they were told they couldn't fly at that airport. So after the explosion, they were in the air another hour to an hour and a half, and they went to a second airport, and that airport was under bombing by Ukraine, and the airport was shut down, and they couldn't get in. Now, I'm not so sure of the truth of that. I would have liked to see, if you have an airport and you got a plane with damage on it, why not take it down? Or let it come down. I mean, it would be very, very interesting to know what what these Azerbaijani guys, the pilots, were thinking. But the people on the plane said that those Azerbaijani pilots saved their lives and saved it from being many more people blown up.
Wow.
There was a
Wow.
an oil tanker near, well, three of them in the Black Sea and in between Black Sea and the Azov Sea that have been blown up. There's another one that was attacked outside of Spain and it sank off the Spanish coast. And here's an article from that, because there was a Norwegian firm, of a Norwegian boat or ship that was going by and saw these people in a lifeboat and didn't pull them out. These Russian sailors. And here's the story. Now, I just report the story. I'm not giving an opinion one way or the other. You can, but it's news, and I've seen this from a couple other sources. This news source is RT. That's put it out there, and the article was written earlier this morning. Norwegian firm explains why its ship didn't rescue the Russian crew. The decision for the sailors to remain on their lifeboat was taken by a Spanish maritime authority, said the company, not by the Norwegian boat itself. A Norwegian firm has denied responsibility for not allowing sailors from a distressed Russian freighter to board one of its ships. Officials in Moscow have described the incident as outrageous and a breach of international law. Russian vessel, the Ursa Major, sank on Monday in the waters between Algeria and Spain after what its operator, the state-owned Oberon Logistics, called a suspected terrorist attack. On Tuesday evening, the company reported that a Norwegian ship, Oslo Carrier 3, had been in the vicinity but had not allowed 14 Russian sailors who had escaped the doomed vessel in a lifeboat to come on board. Bulk Ship Management, the owner of the vessel, claimed on Friday it followed instructions from the MRCC Cartagena, the Spanish maritime authority that handles all rescue missions in the area where the incident occurred. MRCC ordered the master not to take the crew from the vessel in distress on board as their rescue boat was on the way to the scene. In the meantime, the lifeboat was secured alongside our vessel until the rescue boat arrived. The weather was good, none of the crew were injured, and there was no imminent danger. Oberon Logistics, subsidiary of the Russian Defense Ministry, claimed that by barring the sailors from boarding the ship, Norwegian violated international law. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said on Friday that if the assertion is confirmed, the action of the shipmaster would call for universal condemnation. The 142-meter Ursa Major had been en route from St. Petersburg to Vladivostok at the time of the incident. 2 crew members remain missing. Now, the interesting part to me is they do claim that is, and they have, that it's part of a terrorist attack. And they claim the same with the 3 ships. These were all oil tankers. This one was carrying equipment for a nuclear reactor. And the other ships are all Russian oil tankers. And so, do you know anything about this issue, David, or am I telling you something you don't know?
Well, you're telling me some of the things that I don't know. I know that they were attacked. I didn't realize that they were categorizing it as a terrorist attack. My initial reaction was that it was the Ukrainians, going after Russian ships.
Well, the Russians are trying to do the same thing that America did. Like America sometimes deems people to be terrorists, and they tried to get something passed against Vladimir Putin to call him an international terrorist long ago. Russians are doing the same thing. That part of this article I would call propaganda of what they are trying to get you to believe. But then again, if you're using those drone boats, the little piloted drone boats that the Ukrainians are using all over the place to blow stuff up, does it make you a terrorist? And if you're going after things that, arguably the Russians are blowing up Ukrainian infrastructure, maybe this counts as blowing up some infrastructure too, but outside of the territory of where the conflict is. But, they're kind of opening the door, in my opinion, for Russian actions against Ukrainian interests in other areas of the world, or against NATO interests, if this is termed to be a a NATO one. Now Russia put something out in their parliament areas a couple of weeks ago, trying to turn Zelensky into a terrorist also, and say that Ukraine is a terrorist organization. They're trying to do it too, because of what they're doing with airplanes, with boats, with people's apartment complexes in Kazan. So that's where that goes. But a lot of people, we don't hear about these things in America without going to search them out. It's not like you're going to turn on the local news and see anything about this, you know.
Right.
And these are important things to find out about and realize. So, what other piece of news? And you know, I appreciate you coming on. And if you have questions for me, I'd be happy to take them. But don't feel like you got to stick around. I'm trying to get the content and record my show, and it's a little bit hard to do. Number one, not in the studio, and number two, I don't have a computer available to me to pull up what I normally pull up. So I appreciate you coming on and assisting me.
Oh, anytime. The one question that I have is, as soon as Trump was elected, and you know, the initial euphoria that I felt waned a little bit, and you know, I've become more realistic in that, you know, he's not going to be able to do everything right away. Some of this stuff is going to take time, but he has started down the path that I want him to start down. Me and millions of other Americans. But there are things that he's not going to be able to do right away. And I hope that the American people are patient with him, and, you know, because the deep state is there. I mean, it's been proven over the past 4 years that, you know, these people, they hate Trump. They don't want him in power. They don't like what he represents.
Yeah, but
And
doesn't that mean they hate the rest of us too?
yeah, they do. And you know, that's my next point is they don't want us to have the freedom. They want to be in control. And again, that's not what America is all about. And you know, I'm not worried about myself as much as I am my kids and my grandkids, because I'm old. You know, the it's gonna take a while, I believe, for, you know, Trump to get rid of some of these shenanigans that have been taking place. But I'm just hopeful that he does so. I'm tired of the propaganda. I'm tired of the lies. I'm tired of, you know, being told we're idiots, and, you know, we're the deplorables, and, you know, the people that have been in charge for so long and have just lied to us constantly. You know,
Well,
I get,
but here
you know,
isn't it a problem? Well, here's the problem that I have, and I appreciate your commentary on that, and I agree for the most part. But the problem is that it's always a pendulum, and we only have 4 years. Trump's only got 4 years, and it'll go by in the blink of an eye. The older I
I,
get, the more I know that's true. And 4 years is nothing. And the deep state can wait 4 years. And I'm not so sure. The rest of the world has a serious problem with us doing this all the time too, because we do it constantly. Every 4 years, it's a complete turnaround in the opposite direction. You know, everybody's going the other way. And then first thing they do, series of executive orders. First day they get into office, series of executive orders, and they change everything back. And they, you know, Trump's going to do the same thing, building a border wall. Well, so he builds the border wall. Biden sells all the stuff to it. Biden will tear it down. The next Democrat will tear it down or put big holes in it, or, you know, put a ladder up against it so people can crawl over it, or you know, put a hole under it so you can swim a boat under it. You know, whatever. It's but don't you feel that there's that long term it's not going to change because it's only 4 years?
well, I can see your point. I don't totally agree. I think that with the response from the last 4 years and the fact that, the Democrats or the liberals, however you want to put it, because I don't believe all Democrats are bad, but their party's sure a mess. The fact that
You
we
napping
over,
over there?
yeah, can you hear me?
I you're sliding off of the video screen. It's pretty funny.
Oh, oh,
No,
now
you don't
can you
have to
see
do
me?
that if you don't want to, but you were sliding off the screen. Sorry to interrupt you. Keep on going. I was listening.
Well, the I think that have you felt the change just within the past month? I've felt the change. I've felt people are more are happy, are carefree, are smiling, are ready to, make investments that they weren't ready to make before. And, I'm usually a very optimistic person anyway. I always believe everything will happen the way that it is supposed to happen. Everything will turn out the way it is supposed to turn out. And I think there are millions of people out there, millions of Americans that now feel the exact same way. They're relieved. There's a sense of relief in the country about, having Donald Trump in charge. He's putting the right people in place. And I was thinking about this just yesterday. I was like, if he does this right, if he is circumspect in the people that he puts in there, is willing to listen, is willing to be open to the other party, working together, I think the American people would say, okay, he did what he was supposed to. He's a Republican, but he was open to that. And I think, and we're going to keep giving the Republicans the power that they need to keep it in this direction, keep the path that we're on, staying on that path.
Yeah, but
And so I'm,
the Republicans are pretty stupid too.
yeah, that's true. That's the
At the
one
top
drawback.
level. I mean, they're disorganized. They can't ever form a good coalition or anything as strong as the Democrats can. The Democrats are in lockstep. I mean, you might as well put them with the SS symbol on their blazer or the swastika, because they are believers, and
Yeah,
they believe in government, and they believe in government at all costs. And so, but the Republicans are always a mess too. The Democrats are in disarray right now. I personally would prefer to see, but all it's a nightmare too. The European democracy is a big joke too. But at least it requires some sort of coalition, in most of those places where you make a coalition. But you got 5 or 6 different parties, each one getting 15 to 30% of the vote and 15 to 30% of the power. So they have to somewhat work together. Maybe things are better that way, but they still have the same problem as we do. Their governments are enormous, and the deep state controls it all. And it's the same deep state that controls us, the same arms suppliers that control us, the same billionaire Soros types that control us. And so I don't know that I'm as optimistic as I otherwise would be. I'd be far more optimistic. And here's what this is, people are going to call me a spy and call me a whatever, somebody that's not patriotic. I am patriotic. But in Russia, the bulk of them, the vast majority of them, are quite patriotic too. And they're very nationalistic. We are globalists, and we shouldn't be. Most Americans are not. But when you get to the government, it's global. We want to dominate and control the entire world, and it continues. Everything that Trump's been doing for every statement of positioning that he has said in the last 30 days, or whatever it is, more than that, almost 2 months since he got elected, has been about American dominance again. American dominance. America's number one. Well, frankly, I don't care if we're number one, long as my country remains my country. I don't care about what happens in Ukraine. I give a rip. Let them be proud of their own country. And so I fear that Trump is more of the same, especially on the global stage. And I truly believe that the hegemony that we always try to force upon the rest of the world, I believe the rest of the world's tired of it. What are your thoughts?
It might be. Especially with that BRICS. I tell you, we could, as a country, could be in trouble if that all goes to their plan. I don't see any upside to that for Americans. Because our government's going to fight it to the end, and I think we're going to lose that battle.
But they're not fighting it. They're just acting as if it doesn't exist. And just keep saying that, well, the dollar's never going to fall. The dollar's never going to fall. And you can bury your head in the sand all you like, but that doesn't mean that there's no problem.
Right.
I tell you what, as a firsthand viewer, only from the sidelines of the BRICS conference, but there on site, I tell you what, it is noticeable, the feeling, the incredible positivity of the entire thing was unbelievable, and how they were trying to get countries to work together. You don't get that at the UN, and not that I've been, but I've been to some high level meetings and it was always, when I was an interpreter way back when, but it was always somewhat confrontational. And that, if you could get rid of all the confrontation and work for the good of everyone, that would be nice. The US wants to work for the good of everyone, but only if we control it. We got to control it, and you got to play by only our rules. And by the way, those same rules don't apply to us. We're able to bend the rules, or ignore them altogether. The rest are not. Just like here in America. And I want a strong and healthy government. I'm not against it, but I don't want the corruption that we have now. I don't want that. And unfortunately, it's going to take a lot more than the election of one man to convince me that our government is fixed.
Oh, I don't believe it's fixed. And like I said earlier, I don't believe that Trump's going to have enough time to do it. But he started us down the right path in order to get it done. So I am optimistic in that regard. And as long as he can stay alive and he can, put people into place that even if by chance he were not alive, then I think we have a shot at this if we get enough patriots to come on board and, they're actual patriots instead of just mouthing the words.
Well, if ever you could get somebody who wasn't in it for the money or the power, who was in it for the right reason, and it's always money, it's always power, and it's easy to say that when you don't have money and you don't have power, that when you get in there, it won't be about the money and it won't be about power, because quickly those people, far more than half of them, end up being identical to what they were against in the first place.
Yep, I agree. More than 90% of them. How can you go into government? How can you go elected and end up a millionaire?
Hey, David, your connection is failing. Your connection is failing. So, if you want to end, you can end. If you got somewhere to go, you go right ahead. I thank you so much for joining me.
Yep, I do have somewhere to go. So,
okay. Well, I'll take you off, and I appreciate you. Thank you very much, and have a good day. Well, I'm going to continue on in that vein. Got another. We're about at the top of the hour. Well, on the show because I'm recording it. We're about an hour in, got about a half an hour to go. And I wanted to talk to you about this one. This one's kind of entertaining. I like this. U.S. spies, this is again from RT, U.S. spies hid COVID-19 lab leak evidence from Biden. This is what the media is saying. So whether you believe the media or Biden or RT, just take this for what it's worth from the facts that they are presenting or the story that they're presenting, and you can go read up on this. I'm not telling you what to believe or not believe, but it's kind of comical. Pentagon researchers reportedly uncovered the origin of the coronavirus, but the president was not briefed on their findings. U.S. intelligence officials silenced researchers who found evidence that COVID-19 pandemic was a result of a Chinese lab leak, the New York Post reported on Thursday, citing sources. According to the outlet, researchers' analysis included dozens of data points to back up the lab leak version, but none of them made it to the 2021 report ordered by President Joe Biden, which stated that the virus was probably not genetically engineered. I know you know that, and I know that JR has gone deeply into this to find some of the things, but this is the Russian side of that propaganda, which is sometimes fun to read. I skip a couple paragraphs to go to, pardon me, the damning findings were overlooked in the report on COVID-19 origins prepared by the Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines, which was presented to Biden in August 2021. The researchers were forbidden from sharing their findings, including with Congress and the FBI. The scientists who had subject matter expertise were silenced, a source close to their work told the New York Post, adding that Biden and other officials were completely unwitting. Well, that doesn't make sense. This has to be a translation error. Completely unwitting about the evidence that the virus was likely the result of a lab leak. An earlier report by the Wall Street Journal claimed that U.S. intelligence officials also had a hand in excluding FBI findings on the origins of COVID-19 from Biden's report. Isn't that entertaining? And has anybody heard this yet? I've heard this from a couple of different sources, but I haven't heard anything, not in America, because other countries are sanctioning us. And China has done it quite a bit in the last couple of months. The most recent, here it is, dated this morning. China sanctions U.S. defense firms. Beijing has placed restrictions on Washington's military assistance to Taiwan, the foreign ministry has said. Beijing has imposed sanctions on 7 U.S. defense companies and their executives in response to Washington's sale of arms to Taiwan in violation of the One China principle, the Chinese foreign ministry announced on Friday. Move comes after outgoing U.S. President Joe Biden last week authorized a $571.3 million military package to Taiwan. Washington actions interfere in China's internal affairs and undermine China's sovereignty and territorial integrity, the Chinese foreign ministry said as it announced the restrictions. The companies targeted by the sanction include In-Situ, Hudson Technologies, Saronic Technologies, Raytheon Canada, Raytheon Australia, Arcom Inc., and Oceaneering International Incorporated. The ministry said relevant senior executives of the companies had also been blacklisted without providing names. These sanctions will freeze movable and immovable assets belonging to the U.S. firms and their executives within China, and ban organizations and individuals in the country from trading or collaborating with them, the ministry said. The restrictions, which will contribute to already strained relationships between Beijing and Washington, were announced after Biden approved a record $895 billion defense budget, which surpassed last year's allocation by $9 billion. The bill does not refer to Ukraine aid. However, it contains measures aimed at strengthening the U.S. presence and defense capabilities in the Indo-Pacific region, primarily to counter China. Beijing has already condemned the bill, citing it as negative content on China and attempts to play up the China threat narrative. Beijing repeatedly stresses that it considers the self-governing island of Taiwan to be an inalienable part of the country under the One China principle, denounces Washington arms sales to Taipei, accusing the U.S. of fomenting tension over Taiwan. That's been going on for a while, and on these sanctions, it's quite entertaining, but horrifying as well. The U.S. keeps seizing foreign assets and freezing them with a long-term effort of taking them. People come over here and start businesses, or they come over here to conduct business, and then they get subject to sanctions. Well, the rest of the world's tired of it, and what's going to happen? Now think about this. I think about this, but I could be a little bit odd. Now think about this. This is important. So Russia is subject to sanctions. Enormous. They keep calling it new packages of sanctions, and every other month you get a new package of sanctions. There are sanctions now against their shadow fleets. Now they're blowing up these shadow fleets that are delivering oil to other countries, they claim, in violation of sanctions. So now we're blowing them up, but not admitting that we're doing it. These sanctions, and I got to thinking about this from a strategic point of view. Number one, the sanctions haven't worked. Okay, they haven't stopped Russia from their oil economy from thriving under sanctions. It hasn't stopped them from delivering oil and oil products outside of Russia. Their growth has gone up, especially in the South China, for imagine Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, all those places in the Southeast Asia section where Russia's connected, and most notably in India. These pipelines and natural gas lines have been completed between the countries, and sanctions aren't stopping those countries from working together. And the reason I say that is because those transactions are not done in dollars. The report I gave last week from a strategic point of view, that BRICS is adding enough members, and they haven't even all accepted yet. And if they do, the percentage will be somewhere close to 45, 47%. But right now, it's more than half of the world population are members of BRICS, more than half. And 41% of the global GDP are members of BRICS, which is one of its core principles, has a non-interference pact with, or non-interference portion, which requires you to not interfere with what other countries are doing. And all we want to do is interfere with what other countries are doing and place sanctions. And all these other people have said that sanctions aren't, not of other BRICS members. You cannot sanction other BRICS members. Well, you can sanction people who aren't members of BRICS, right? And that this, we're looking for a friendly organization, and it's more than half of the planet now, and far more than the EU, far more than the Western dominated economies, the G7, the G20. It's what are you going to do when? Well, first of all, sanctions don't work. We know this, but what are you going to do when the Chinese, like they're already doing, laugh at you, and they laugh and go, all right, sanction me, okay, tariff me. Guess what? I'll sell my products to the other 50% of the other parts of the 50% of the world that I'm included in, and we have a huge market. Yep, we care about your market, US, but not that much. Fix your own stuff, buy your stuff elsewhere, or pay our cost to get it. Then the ultimate consumer price for that product is ours. Meanwhile, the BRICS countries, which are more than half of the world and don't allow each other to have sanctions against each other, and don't allow disputes internally between countries that aren't resolved or put on the back burner, like the China-India border dispute with resolution, hopefully. They want to be part of this big economic massive economic engine that is BRICS. And as we get smaller and BRICS gets larger, there's not a whole lot that a Western sanction is going to do. So Western sanctions haven't worked, number one, and the Western sanctions, even if they're in place, aren't going to bring the results that are intended by inputting the sanctions. People, you need to keep an eye on this and keep looking into BRICS and keep looking into the friendship between those countries, because the core principles are very important. Let's see. Germany dissolved their parliament. How about that? Rare snap election will be held in February as critics of Western funding for Ukraine conflict continue to gain support. People are sick of this Ukrainian war, and they don't believe that it's all Russia, Russia, Russia. So it's a longer story. Here you go. A three-way coalition led by Chancellor Scholz collapsed in early November amid internal disputes over spending priorities, mostly Ukraine. On December 16, the German leader lost the confidence vote in the Bundestag, heralding the end of his tenure at the helm of the minority government. How do you like that? So this is German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier ordered the dissolution of the federal parliament on Friday, following the collapse of the country's ruling coalition. Mainstream parties in Germany are facing pressure at the ballot box from critics of Berlin's support for Ukraine. A parliamentary election in Germany was originally scheduled for late September of 2025. Since World War II, Bundestag has been dissolved on only 3 occasions: 1972, 1982, and 2005. The EU powerhouse is currently experiencing political turbulence as its economy struggles to overcome stagnation. Non-mainstream parties, including the right-wing Alternative for Germany and left-wing Sarah Wagenknecht Alliance, have scored several successes in regional elections. Tell you what, now France, Germany, soon to be England, in the same boat. People are starting to clamor for change in Ukraine, get rid of Zelensky, illegitimate president. Nothing on the horizon for what they plan to do there. These are dark times. JR says it's a cool time to be alive and very interesting. I like to be as positive, not so much so on the global stage. There was another interesting article I read. Get this. U.S. could buy Nord Stream. The Serbian president has made the prediction following recent reports about American investors trying to make a bid for the pipeline. The sabotaged Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline could become the property of a U.S. investor within a year, and gas supplies from Russia to the EU could be resumed through the connector, Serbian President Vučić has suggested. Vučić shared his view about the future of the pipeline in an interview with German news outlet Handelsblatt published Friday. I dare to predict, he said. In a year at the latest, Nord Stream will be owned by an American investor and gas will flow from Russia to Europe through the pipeline, the Serbian leader said. Mark my words, 1 year until Nord Stream is up and running. Last month, the Wall Street Journal reported that U.S. financier and investor Stephen Lynch had asked permission from the U.S. Treasury Department to buy the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline if it is put up for auction next year. Pipeline, which was built to deliver Russian gas to Germany and the rest of Western Europe, was ruptured by explosions in the Baltic Sea in September. Lynch proposed that a deal for the pipeline could be seen as a strategic opportunity for long-term U.S. interest. Ownership of the pipeline would give the American government a tool to exert pressure on peace negotiations with Russia to end the Ukrainian conflict. Lynch reportedly said he could buy the Nord Stream 2, which has been valued at around $11 billion for pennies on the dollar, adding that it would be a once-in-a-generation opportunity for the U.S. to take control of the EU's energy supply. While no one has claimed responsibility for the 22 attack on the pipeline, Western media outlets have reported that a special operations team linked to Ukraine were behind the operation. U.S. reporter Seymour Hersh claimed the U.S. Navy set explosives on the pipeline during NATO exercises in the Baltic, and that the order to destroy the gas conductors was given by President Joe Biden. Most recently, a Danish harbor master has told the Politiken outlet that he had sailed out to the site of the blast and encountered U.S. warships in the area of the explosion, but with their transponders switched off. Moscow claims that Western intelligence services, particularly those of the U.S., were directly involved in the sabotage. American firms have benefited from the attack due to their position as suppliers of liquefied natural gas to Europe. The head of Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service, Sergei Naryshkin, said last month that his agency had information about direct involvement of professionals from the U.S. and British special services in Nord Stream sabotage. London and Washington and Kiev have denied any involvement. How do you like that? My question that comes up from this, and I will research it and see if I can come up with an answer for you, is who owns it now? And what makes Lynch think he can buy it? Somebody's going to repair that line. You know, if it's worth $11 billion and it's going to supply I haven't followed much on it. I just saw the article today and thought it was interesting. But I shall make it a priority of mine to discuss and find out information on Nord Stream 2 and who owns it and how possibly Lynch could buy it. Lynch claiming that he can buy it for pennies on the dollar might indicate that he knows who owns it. Whose property is it? Truthfully, I haven't looked into it, but it's a Russian-German project. Who actually owns the pipeline itself? I'll find out. I'll see if I can dig in there and get some information over the weekend and hopefully have something entertaining to review. I'll start with the Seymour Hersh article. Now, I read that a long time ago, but I read the short version. I even paid for his site for a while, and it was well written. I did read the entire thing, and he believes it's the work of the U.S. But it might be time to refresh that, because especially if someone is claiming that the U.S. is attempting to buy it, and how can the U.S. give him permission to buy it? Is my question. It said in the article that he was seeking permission to buy. How can the U.S. give him permission? Maybe it's you're not allowed to own it. But this is Serbian President Vučić who said this, that he thinks the U.S. is trying to buy it. So that's interesting. What else do we have? Oh, there was an interesting article on BRICS also. So as you know, I reported that there were the 9 countries that are joining BRICS, and then there's 4 more that are still out there that are hoping to do it. But this member was entered already this year. This new BRICS member will help build a fair global order. The United Arab Emirates, who is a member of BRICS already, with its strong economy, strategic location, and flexible foreign policy, is a crucial addition to the bloc. This is written by Murad Sadigzadeh. Hope I said that right. President of the Middle East Studies Center and a visiting lecturer. This is on Telegram. The United Arab Emirates is a rapidly developing nation with strong economic and political ambitions. Pursuing strategic goals of diversification, the UAE is actively expanding international connections and aiming to strengthen its position on the global stage. This initiative is taking place amid significant changes in global politics. Now, side here, Saudi Arabia has been invited. Saudi Arabia has not declined. Saudi Arabia, it would be a full member of BRICS, and they're trying to make that happen. And the talk has been very positive, but it hasn't happened yet. If Saudi Arabia becomes a key BRICS member, Katie bar the door, I think there's going to be a run on BRICS from other Arabic countries, other oil countries. If you pay attention to international news like I do, you will see that a lot of times Qatar is used as kind of a middle ground for having meetings. It's very, very beautiful there, very rich there. And so, as a diplomat, if you can get over there, trust me, you're taken care of. I was taken care of, and I was nobody. I lived there for a year, and all I was a simple consultant at a local firm. And but it's they definitely take care of you, and the economy is booming. And they say the same for many of the Arabic countries, the developed Arabic countries, the ones that are still in chaos. I haven't been to as many of those, but there's a lot going on in the Arabic and African, North African, Northeast African world. And the Middle East, that entire area, is extremely volatile, extremely productive. The Chinese are all over the place trying to build ports, build alternative routes to get through the Mediterranean Sea, and all of that. And meanwhile, the U.S. and Israel are attempting to thwart those efforts, notably in Syria. And Iraq has had a large portion to do with that. And I know nobody believes in the U.S. government's reasoning. They give you a fake reason, but the real reason is always the same. Look where the dollars are going to and coming from, and that's the key. Anyway, that's a little side on that about if Saudi Arabia ever becomes a full member of BRICS. The initiative is taking place amid significant changes in global politics, as the long-standing world order, which is the U.S., the West, dominated, and singularity, one rule, which has shaped the rules of engagement for many years, increasingly shows its inability to account for the interests of non-Western countries like the UAE. Faced with the challenges of the old system, the UAE is actively seeking ways to reinforce its independence. Joining BRICS on January 1, 2024 is a crucial step in this direction, providing not only a reduction in reliance on Western countries, but also the opportunity to promote its own interests at the global level. Then it tells about who the BRICS is. For Abu Dhabi, membership of BRICS presents a significant strategic orientation. UAE is aiming to build an international relations with greater flexibility and to diversify its economic partnerships. Not all partnerships should be based on the dollar, is what BRICS thinks. Not all partnerships need to include payment through SWIFT. Not all partnerships need to be subject to U.S. sanctions if you pick somebody that they don't want you to do business with because it's not profitable for them. It may be profitable for you and for the person you're dealing with, but if the U.S. don't like it, they just sanctions everybody, or they don't allow you to use a SWIFT banking system. Those are the basic things that BRICS is about. And as more and more countries come in, more and more countries will come in. The impetus is there. And I was there at the ground level. So the UAE is aiming to build greater flexibility in economic partnerships, which will be a key step in reinforcing its sovereignty and resilience amid global uncertainty. What does the UAE gain from BRICS? Membership of BRICS opens significant opportunities for the UAE to strengthen its position on the global stage. With one of the most rapid developing economies in the region, the UAE aims to diversify its international economic ties and reduce dependence on traditional partners. Joining BRICS grants the UAE better access to several large and promising markets, which will allow it to expand trade and reinforce investments. And here it gets to some interesting numbers, and these are growing. This is as of today. The combined GDP of BRICS countries constitutes a substantial part of the global economy, and participation in the alliance now creates new prospects for the UAE to grow its exports and imports. In 2023, for example, China's GDP reached 17.96 trillion, India's 3.4 trillion, and Russia's 1.7 trillion. These figures demonstrate the immense economic potential accessible to the UAE. Members of BRICS also opens pathways for attracting significant investment. Other countries which is particularly important for the development of the UAE's infrastructure, technology, and industry. And they have separate blocks for all of these in the BRICS. In 2023, BRICS countries saw a substantial increase in foreign direct investment from other places. They're not relying solely on the World Bank. They're not relying on UN bureaucracy. They're not relying on Western permission to do so. This investment highlights new investor interests and presents new opportunities for UAE. Another key advantage of BRICS membership is access to the organization's financial resources. Here it is. The BRICS established New Development Bank, which isn't in competition with the World Bank. It's an alternative to the World Bank. Provides funding for major infrastructure projects and fosters economic development among member states. The UAE can leverage these resources to undertake large-scale projects that will contribute to its economic growth and modernization. Additionally, BRICS membership aligns with the UAE's political ambitions by allowing it to actively shape the global agenda and ensure its influence in the international process. This is a very long article, and I don't intend to read it all, but boy, it's big. What does the UAE gain from BRICS? Is the opportunities we discussed about. I'll go to the headers of it. And a mutual beneficial partnership. These are partnerships that they're building with all these other countries. There can't be any conflict. And then they give notes. With GDP of $421 billion in 2023, UAE already holds a leading position in the Arab world. Country's economy is characterized by high growth rate, diversity, and a high per capita income of around $47,000. These indicators make the UAE an attractive partner for BRICS, expanding the bloc's economic potential. UAE membership of BRICS strengthened its overall economic weight, providing access to financial resources and substantial influence in the Gulf region. And then they talk about the path to the fair world order. There's another article on this exact same topic about Egypt. As previously noted, BRICS and the UAE share a common goal of creating a more fair, balanced world order. People really talk about this, okay? When I was at the BRICS conference, people talk about fairness in the world order. They're tired of the U.S. dictating who's in charge. People, you need to follow up on this BRICS stuff. It's very, very important. And if you don't know about it, you probably should. I am absolutely going to continue more on this, see what I can find out about that pipeline and whether Lynch can really buy it or not. And that will be interesting. And I've come to near the end of the show. And at that time, I would like to tell you about our upcoming programs. Tonight, after my show, I have The Beholder with DJ Polly. And then that rounds out the week. As we start next week, Monday the 30th, we have Shield Maidens, 1:15 with Stacey Shore and Lisa Panette. Good show, like it. 2 p.m., we have Really Big Shoe with JR. We have me on at 4 p.m. on International Flavor. I'm flying that day, so I'll probably do another recorded one, and I'm going to disclose my location after I get there. So we have Jack's Car Show that evening. At 2 p.m., we have Really Big Shoe. At 4 p.m., we have International Flavor. January 1 comes up on Wednesday. I am going to do my show on New Year's Eve. On January 1, we have at 9 a.m., Damn Schwag. We have the Gabby Hayes Show, Really Big Shoe, International Flavor, and Radio Free Missouri. I may have to can a bunch of these and do some of these shows. So if you want to follow me on... I'm on YouTube at International Flavor-English. My Russian version is Между народный вкус. It's written in Cyrillic, but it means international flavor as well. And and you can find me at Samuel Trapp, TRA 2 Ps. And I very much enjoy you listening to the show. I'm glad you're here. I hope that you find my musings and ponderings interesting, and you can reach me if you have any questions for me by sending emails to live@damradio.com or to my email which is samtrap1@gmail.com. So long, and thank you all for playing.